The smell of smoke and charred meat hung in the backyard, heavy as a curtain. Conversations overlapped. Kids screeched somewhere beyond the fence, glasses clinked, and the air was thick with that forced cheer suburban gatherings always seemed to breed. Maris glided among them as if she owned the place, flashing her polished smile, tossing lines people laughed at too quickly. She was practiced at it, drawing attention, collecting laughs like trophies. Everyone else might as well have been stagehands in the drama she thought was her life. I wasn't trying to spark anything. I only asked one simple question. When exactly are you leaving this weekend? That was it. Practical. Ordinary. The kind of thing couples ask each other every day. She stopped as though I had just ruined her monologue. She turned, hand on hip, voice sharp enough for everyone to hear. God, stop playing the perfect husband. And just like that, the air shifted. Conversation sagged, smiles tightened, the laughter stuttered. Even the dog next door quieted as if it understood a spectacle was happening. Her words didn't answer. They performed. They told the whole backyard I wasn't a partner. I was furniture that had suddenly spoken out of turn. Right, I said. One word, calm as ice water poured over fire. Maris blinked. She expected my usual routine, the apology, the soft reassurance, the sheepish smile that turned me into a rug for her to walk across. Instead, I lifted my voice. Right. You're absolutely correct. I should quit auditioning for Perfect Husband in a play that was canceled years ago. A short laugh from someone nearby died midair. Silence dropped, heavy and awkward. I nodded at our host, polite to a fault. Thanks for the food? Then I turned to Maris, whose posture had frozen, the smile wiped clean. Enjoy your weekend. Take all the time you need. And I walked out, past the tables, past the forced laughter trying to recover, past the hedge that smelled too much like someone else's life. The screen door groaned behind me. Out on the street, the night was wide and open. Humiliation is strange. It can rot in you, or it can burn out of you. By the time I reached the corner, the rot was gone, and only the fire remained. Sunday became a silent museum. Maris offered something like an apology, though even that was just another performance. Maybe I overreacted, she said, her tone so magnanimous it could have been carved in marble. As if humiliating me in front of half the neighborhood was equivalent to knocking over a glass of water. I muttered something non-committal and took the mower to a lawn that didn't need cutting. Lines in the grass gave me the order our marriage never had. She used the word space, the way rich people say vacation. Space to breathe, space to think, space to decide if being married to me fit into the self-centered narrative she'd written for herself. I nodded. Space was exactly what I was going to give her, neatly measured, labeled, and stacked. We ate at different times, slept back to back. She caressed her phone like a pet that always adored her. I stared at the same page of a book for an hour, too distracted to move past a single sentence. I didn't act on Sunday. Not yet. Monday, 6 a.m. She dragged her suitcase across the floor like a coffin demanding attention. Don't wait up, she said, pressing her lips into the air near my cheek, the barest imitation of affection. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied. She lingered in the doorway, waiting for me to stumble into my old lines. Be safe. Text me. Love you. I said nothing. The silence stretched, sticky and uncomfortable, until she frowned like a vending machine had just eaten her last dollar. Then the door shut. Her car disappeared down the street. I dialed the locksmith before the taillights were gone. 8 sharp, I said. Every lock. The man chuckled knowingly. See you then. Coffee brewed while I pulled out the evidence I never thought I'd need. Messages, screenshots, little daggers she'd typed and thrown. Marriage is just a piece of paper. I'm not asking permission. Stop suffocating me. I need to live my life. On a glowing screen, her words had felt cruel. On paper, they looked pathetic. At 7:45, a van pulled up. The locksmith climbed out, Toolbox in hand, eyes already cataloging the house. "Ex-wife?" he asked. "Soon," I answered. He smiled. The weary kind men give each other when they've seen this too often. By 9, the locks had been reborn. Each bolt slammed into place with the sound of authority. He handed me 2 new keys. "Now it's yours. Nobody gets in unless you want them to." For the first time in years, the house felt like mine. Not shared, not borrowed, not conditional. Mine. Boxes came next. Corrugated walls, tape tearing like victory, bubble wrap crinkling under my hands. I folded her dresses, wrapped her shoes, sealed her cosmetics in neat rows. Everything went in her bookshelf was the best joke. The art of not caring. Boundaries for beginners. How to get what you want without asking. Prophecies. Everyone. I lingered over our wedding photo. My younger self looked straight into the camera, full of belief in forever. I wrapped it in plastic, labeled the box personal items, and pushed it away. By noon, the living room was a warehouse of consequences, towers of boxes, orderly and indifferent. The silence in the house was no longer heavy, it was cleansing. At 3, I sat across from a lawyer with the eyes of a man who collected scalps for a living. He scanned the evidence silently, like he was mapping terrain. "She said this in front of people?" 15 witnesses, and a very uncomfortable hamburger. He allowed himself a smile. "That's an admission against interest. Filing Thursday. Served Friday." "Served?" I repeated, and the word felt satisfying. "You'll want to be scarce when it happens. People grab whatever's closest when the ground shifts. That won't be me." He scribbled a note with a pen that cost more than my first car. "You've made this very easy. Most people bring smoke. You brought a bonfire, complete with marshmallows." "Glad to help," I said, and shook his hand like signing a verdict. That evening, I laid a tarp on the lawn, staged the boxes in precise columns. Curtains twitched across the street. Mrs. Whitmore appeared on her porch, pearls shining, arms crossed like a magistrate reviewing evidence. "Good morning, Malcolm," she said. "Morning." She glanced at the boxes. "Spring cleaning?" "More like marital reorganization," I said. Her lips twitched into a smile too sharp to be called friendly. "About time." And with that, she disappeared inside, verdict delivered. I cooked dinner, drank a beer that tasted like relief, and watched the light fall over the street. When my phone buzzed, I ignored it. The second buzz I ignored too. On the third, I answered. "Brother?" said the familiar voice of the man who'd manned the grill. In the background I heard dishes clattering. "Just wanted to say, you did the right thing. We all saw it. She humiliated you and you walked away. No scene, no yelling. That's rare." "Felt overdue," I said. "My wife says she wanted to applaud. She says she's using your name as a verb now. Don't be a doormat. Malcolm it." I laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it felt genuine. The evening settled soft and blue. The boxes whispered under their tarp, and I slept like a man who had finally returned something overdue. By Tuesday, the lawn had stopped belonging to me. It belonged to the neighborhood. The boxes sat outside like monuments, and everyone treated them like public art. Cars slowed to gawk. Dog walkers pulled their leashes shorter so they could linger. Kids rode past twice just to whisper, "Is she moving?" loud enough for me to hear. I didn't mind. Let them look. Let them guess. The truth was simple. She wanted space, and now she had an entire yard of it, taped, labeled, and weatherproofed. Inside, the house was quieter than a church. The walls no longer carried her perfume, no laughter, no footsteps, just the sound of my own breathing. Strange thing was, I liked it. Loneliness feels different when you've stopped pretending you're loved. Solitude was honest. Wednesday was nothing but phone calls and whispers. The lawyer confirmed the paperwork. Promised me she'd be served by the end of the week. His calmness made the whole thing sound like routine dental work. Unpleasant, necessary, Final. Outside, the boxes became a sideshow. A teenager took photos from across the street. By evening, I saw them posted online. A blurry shot captioned, "Drama on Willow Lane. Suburbia loves blood when it isn't theirs." Thursday was the longest day, stretched thin with waiting. I busied myself with repairs I'd ignored for months, tightening a hinge, fixing a flickering bulb, cleaning the garage. Mundane tasks became rituals of ownership. Every screw tightened was a reminder. This was my house again, not a stage for her next performance. The neighbors still watched, though now less discreetly. One woman pretended to tie her shoe in front of my driveway. Another leaned on her mailbox with a phone pressed to her ear, speaking in a tone bright with gossip. I nodded at them politely, the way you acknowledge extras in a play. They were the audience. I was the director. Friday arrived with the inevitability of a curtain call. I woke before sunrise, drank coffee in silence, and waited. Noon brought the lawyer's message. Filed. Served this evening. The day dragged, the hours elastic. The boxes glowed in the setting sun, patient as soldiers. I sat on the porch with a drink, calm enough to scare myself. No shaking hands, no second thoughts, just certainty. At 6:47 p.m., her car turned onto the street. Smooth, confident, like nothing had changed. The passenger seat was stacked with paper bags, a bottle's neck poking out of one. She stepped out carefully, hair styled soft, her dress chosen to whisper forgiveness. She expected flowers on the table, maybe an apology. Instead, her eyes found the boxes. The smile cracked, the bags sagged, glass clinked. For a moment she stood frozen, as if she'd walked into the wrong house by mistake. She rushed to the door, keys jangling. One jammed, wouldn't turn, another refused. Her breath came sharp, frantic. She pounded the wood. "Malcolm!" I opened the door just far enough to be visible. Beer in hand. Calm. "Evening? Back from your little retreat?" Her voice pitched high. "What is this? Why are my things outside?" "This?" I gestured to the lawn. "This is the space you wanted, all yours." "You can't be serious." She laughed once, brittle as glass. "This is insane." "No, Maris, you told me to stop playing the perfect husband, so I quit the role. Consider this my last performance." Her hands shook. She bent to grab one of the bags, but the bottle rolled out, clattering down the step. "You can't do this. It's my home, too." "Correction," I said. "It was. You walked out Monday with a suitcase. I simply changed the locks." Her eyes darted to the windows around us. She knew the audience was there, curtains shifting, eyes fixed. Her voice softened, desperate now. "Please, Malcolm, I needed time." "And you got it. Enough time for new locks, new papers, and a clean exit." Tears welled. Her makeup began to run. "We can fix this. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. I still love you." "Love?" I let the word hang. "Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't make a husband a punchline. If that's your version, keep it. I'm done buying." She sagged against the frame, broken lines running down her face. I handed her an envelope. "Court date's inside. You're free now. Enjoy it." And I closed the door. The lock clicked, clean and final. Through the window, I watched her sink to the step, boxed in by her own belongings and the silence of our neighbors. She looked small for the first time in years. Inside, I leaned against the wall, drained my glass, and exhaled. It wasn't joy, not even triumph. It was something sharper, cleaner, relief. The house was mine again, the quiet too. The week after the doorstep opera developed its own weather. The air on our street felt charged, like the sky right before a summer storm. Expectant, nosy, alive. My lawn was finally clear. The last box had been collected, the tarp folded and put away. But the outline of those stacks lingered in people's eyes. When neighbors waved, they did it with a new measure of respect, like I had returned a lost border to the map. Maris texted. Then she called. Then she texted again. The messages lengthened as if word count could purchase absolution. I was exhausted. "I'm sorry I embarrassed you." You know me, I say stupid things when I'm overwhelmed. The chorus changed, but the song remained what it had always been. Give me the stage, pay for the ticket. I scrolled, I didn't reply, and each time my thumb hovered over the keyboard and chose stillness, a hinge inside me stopped squeaking. When Miller, my lawyer, called with the court date, his voice had that starch calm I'd come to trust. 2 weeks, he said. Short docket. Judge Rivera, efficient. Efficient is my favorite adjective, I said. You'll like her, he added. She has little patience for performance. That made 2 of us. I spent the days before the hearing doing small domestic things that felt like declarations. Rehanging a crooked picture, fixing a sticky drawer, touching up paint in the hallway where a suitcase had once dinged the corner in a rush to be anywhere but here. After months of apology, my tone, my timing, my questions, there was relief in actions that didn't require permission or translation. The night before court, I ironed a shirt I hadn't worn in a year and slept without dreams. Morning came with a clean sky and the sound of a delivery truck somewhere in the subdivision. I left early, parked 2 blocks from the courthouse, and walked the last stretch slowly, past benches polished by the backs of people who had waited out decisions. The courthouse itself was unromantic. No marble sweeping to the heavens, just municipal beige and scuffed floors that understood what human drama did to shoe leather. The hallway smelled faintly of coffee and paper. A bailiff with a practiced baritone called out names. Couples sat in islands, their knees not quite touching, floating in the same boat while pretending to have separate oars. Maris arrived exactly on time, which would have surprised me once. Punctuality had always been something she reserved for other people's gaze. She'd chosen contrition like it was an outfit. Dark dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back into the idea of humility. Her eyes, though, kept scanning for cameras that didn't exist. Her attorney, a young man with a good haircut and the optimism of someone who still believed in speeches, leaned toward her and whispered. She nodded at the floor, then glanced up at me as if to try on sincerity one more time. I looked past her, at the seal on the wall, at the flag, at the clock, anywhere but at the theater. When our case was called, the room settled with the quiet of a group that hopes for spectacle, while pretending to hope for reconciliation. Judge Rivera was smaller than I expected and twice as steady. She read the file with the desolate calm of a person who'd seen too many versions of the same story and still believed in the arithmetic of consequence. Miller's presentation was a paved road, precise, smooth, unadorned. He placed exhibits in front of her, printouts of messages, the affidavit from our host, a statement from the man who'd wielded the tongs that night. The words sat on paper without mascara to soften them. Stop playing the perfect husband. Marriage is just a piece of paper. I don't owe you an itinerary. What had once been tossed like glitter now read like nails. Maris's attorney stood. He tried to make it weather, a storm of stress, a gust of miscommunication, the scattered debris of a hard season. A joke, he said too many times. Hyperbole, he added, as if syllables could rescue dignity. He gestured with open palms. His sleeves were very crisp. Judge Rivera did not smile. Ms. Harper, she said, using the base of her name the way a mathematician uses the simplest fraction. Is there any part of counsel's characterization that you disagree with? Maris stood, and for a fraction of a second the version of her I had loved, face open, voice steady, showed up like a ghost. I was unkind, she said, catching my eye and quickly looking away. I didn't mean for it to sound like I don't respect marriage. You said it publicly, the judge replied, and then you left for nearly a week to get space. Do you understand how that might be received by a spouse? Silence spread. It wasn't hostile. It was honest. Miller didn't add anything. He didn't need to. The clock ticked in gentle agreement. When the ruling came, it was as spare as a clean countertop. Petitions granted. Assets divided as negotiated, no fault finalized. The gavel didn't thunder, it clicked. And with that modest sound, a season ended. Outside, on the courthouse steps, the city's afternoon went on without us. Buses sighed. Pigeons explained religion to one another. Maris stood 3 feet away, clutching a folder like a life preserver made of paper. "Malcolm," she began. The wind lifted a strand of hair, and she tucked it behind her ear reflexively, as if she could tidy the moment by tidying herself. "I can't believe we really did this." "We?" I said, not unkindly. "It's remarkable how gently a cut can separate when the skin has already learned where it wants to be. You did what you did, Maris. I finally did something back." She swallowed. Tears arrived on cue. Even she seemed vaguely surprised by them, like a prop department had delivered too many. "I was trying to be funny," she said. "You know me." "I do," I said. "That's why we're here." For a second, I thought she'd try to touch my sleeve. Instead, she looked over my shoulder at nothing and nodded to herself, the way actors do at the end of a scene when the director says, "Cut." She walked away without looking back, and the echo of her heels on stone sounded like a kind of freedom. I thought the gavel would be the last noise. It wasn't. Almost midnight, the door made a new sound. Soft first, like rain finding confidence. A knock that tested the wood rather than challenged it. I sat in the dark because lights felt like commentary, and I was done with commentary for a while. "Malcolm?" Her voice through the door had lost its varnish. "Please, it's me." I set my glass down and said nothing. Silence is a language, and I had been studying. She tried the handle. She knew it was futile. Habit runs faster than thought. A second knock, a third. "Can we just talk?" Then softer. "I can't sleep. I keep thinking. Please." Across the street, a light snapped on. Then another. The neighborhood did what it always did. Audited the facts with their curtains. Somewhere a dog gave a single bark and, finding no follow-up, decided this was above his pay grade. Her whisper thinned into a kind of chant. "It's me," she said again, as if the fact of her identity could turn a bolt. "I made a mistake." The porch step creaked under her weight. I saw her shadow smear across the frosted glass. She sat down. The edge of a sob broke and reknit. In another life, that sound would have hauled me to my feet. In this one, it made me think of how actors sometimes cry at the wrong moment and blame the script. A minute stretched. 2. Then, "Are you really not going to open the door?" I cleared my throat only to discover I didn't need to. The door answered for me with its stillness. Behind her, a car rolled past slowly, taillights painting the street with 2 thin veins of red. Someone whispered from a porch. A screen door clicked softly as a spectator changed seats. The longest part wasn't the pleading. It was the period after the pleading when she ran out of lines. Words had always been her scaffolding. Without them, she sagged against the frame. The wood held. I had chosen it for that. Then came the smallest sound of the night, the surrender exhale. The one people make when they finally understand the geometry of a space they can't occupy anymore. "I'm going," she said at last, to the door, to herself, to the audience who would pretend they hadn't been there. Her footsteps retreated down the path. The engine turned over. The street returned to its ordinary silence, which felt extravagant. I didn't sleep because I was tired. I slept because I was done. When the final mailing from the court came, official stamps, embossed names, the crisp confidence of state paper, I stood at the counter and read it all the way through, as if somewhere in the clauses there might be a secret note that said, "You did fine." There wasn't. The absence felt like a compliment. Friends insisted on a gathering. Not a celebration, no one was gauche enough to use that word, but something adjacent. We stood in the same backyard where the first domino had been tipped. It smelled like summer and apology that had finally dried up. The jokes went easier this time because they were aimed at the past, not at me. Our host clapped me on the shoulder with the practical affection of a man who has kept everyone fed. "You want the first plate?" he asked. "I'll take the second," I said. "I've had enough firsts for a while." The man who'd called me brother, on the night the boxes went out, lifted a cup. "To Malcolm," he said. "To dignity with an actual spine." A couple of people laughed softly. Someone else added, "To knowing when to stop performing." "Man, you turned humiliation into art." It landed as the perfect kind of imprecision, not technically true, but emotionally shaped like truth. I shook my head, smiling. "Accidental art," I said, "like when you spill paint and it looks better than your plan." The group laughed, warmly, without malice, the way laughter sounds when it isn't buying something. And finally, I laughed with them. Not with that brittle edge I'd worn for months. Not with the cracked mask of a man who's faking it until a better actor shows up. A laugh with open windows in it. Later, when the sun slid down and the yard filled with that forgiving blue that forgives nothing but makes everything look forgiven, conversations frayed into smaller threads. Someone asked if I'd start dating. I shrugged. "Eventually," I said. "For now, I'm getting very good at cooking for one." "A dangerous skill," the host's wife said. "Women will assume you don't need saving." "That's the dream," I replied. On my way out, she touched my arm. "For what it's worth," she said, "the night of the barbecue, I wanted to say something. We all did. You saying nothing was louder." "It was new for me," I admitted. "Keep it," she said. "It suits you." The street found a new normal. People waved with their whole arm instead of their fingers. Mrs. Whitmore stopped me by the mailbox a week later. "Mr. Harper," she said, as if we'd been corresponding formally for years, "I ran into your former spouse. I hope the encounter did not endanger local property values," I said. Her smile was surgical. I didn't need to say anything. She did all the speaking for me. A beat. Grammar has been restored. I thanked her the way one thanks an institution. She nodded like an institution receiving proper thanks and returned to pruning a bush with what I could only describe as moral satisfaction. At home, I rearranged the bedroom to please no one but me, which turned out to be startlingly easy. I took a book to the porch each evening and sometimes read it and sometimes didn't. The point was not the reading. The point was wanting nothing from the moment that the moment wasn't already giving. Every now and then the scene from that first night visited. The way laughter had thinned. The way her sentence had performed instead of answered. The way my one word had changed temperature in my veins. I didn't replay it like a martyr. I filed it like a clerk. Facts in order, lessons on top. On a late Sunday, when the neighborhood air smelled faintly of cut grass and char, and the soft electricity of people polishing their weekends, I poured a drink and sat on the steps. I thought of her line, delivered with that bright, careless precision of a blade tossed for applause. "God, stop playing the perfect husband." I raised my glass to the quiet. "Wish granted," I said. And inside that staying, I found what I hadn't felt in a long time. Not victory, not revenge, just room. Enough for one person to stand without shrinking, to sit without auditioning, to sleep without speeches waiting behind the teeth. Room at last to be the only person required for the scene. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.